It's been a year now since a magnitude 7.8 earthquake rocked southeastern Turkey and northwestern Syria, causing widespread death and destruction. Thousands of lives were lost and many more changed forever. For those still living in the Syrian city of Idlib, the nightmare of that fateful night continues as they struggle to rebuild with little access to clean water or electricity.
1 year on from the tragedy that took his wife, 3 of his children and his home, Khalid Weber still hasn't come to terms with what happened. The 50-year-old rents this house in the countryside, a short drive from Idlib, in order to care for his surviving children. But money is tight and stability a thing of the past.
The earthquake changed my life dramatically. The scenes are still in my memory. I don't sleep well. Sometimes I wake up very terrified and feel like the house is going to fall on my head. I'm still living with the shock of the earthquake. Moving is difficult, rents are very high, and there are no job opportunities.
The earthquake caused widespread destruction in 5 of Syria's 14 governorates, with Idlib among the very worst hit. The region's infrastructure and basic services were decimated, plunging the area's living conditions to unprecedented levels. Here in the towns of Harim and Amranaz in western Idlib, volunteers are building new homes to replace those destroyed by the quake. These reconstruction efforts are funded through individual donations and are meant to improve housing for many of those displaced.
As part of this campaign, these projects aim to establish several multi-storey residential units, with each floor containing 4 apartments. Naturally, we were late in starting the project due to challenges such as weather conditions, in addition to delays in construction operations. These units are designed to be earthquake resistant. We expect the projects to be completed within 5 months, and we're working on moving families in to live in these apartments.
For those forced to live in emergency camps following the earthquake's destruction, new homes cannot be built fast enough across the region. Residents here are suffering, with little access to clean water, electricity or basic hygiene.
Living in a tent is very difficult, as our homes were destroyed in the earthquake and we were forced to move. We received little aid and our conditions are very bad. There's no water, no lighting and no sanitation. Life in the camp is very difficult. Our conditions are very difficult here, and there is a shortage of blankets. We can't get hold of any, and things are very difficult.
For so many here in Idlib, processing the magnitude of last year's tragedy must be put off until permanent living arrangements can be secured.
Let's bring in Lena Schellhammer here. She's the program manager for Syria and Turkey for the relief agency Malteser International. And she was on site after the earthquake and only left recently. Welcome to the program. Lena, it's been a year now since that devastating earthquake. What does the affected region look like today?
Good morning. Yes, I was in January in Syria, northwestern Syria, for a visit after the earthquake. And you can still see the rubble left and right on the streets, still many damaged households and people living in tents. And you also need to say that 2 million people living in tents, and many of them lived there before the earthquake, but also now many people lost their houses, or that was a makeshift shelter for them during the earthquake, and now have to go back to living in tents without enough to survive or to live in a winter settings.
What do you make, Lena, of the way that authorities in Turkey and Syria have responded to this disaster?
There's a difference because in Turkey there's a government who can respond to the earthquake consequences, while in Syria there's no government that is at least accepted internationally, so there's no support for, or less support for reconstruction and rehabilitation. And humanitarian NGOs focus on the immediate humanitarian needs that are dire, and not only because of the earthquake, but because of the conflicts and many years of conflicts in Syria. And there you can see that, for instance, 69 percent of the hospitals are only functioning in northwestern Syria, and nearly 4 million people of those living in northwestern Syria need humanitarian assistance and need basic health access.
Your organization says it has witnessed a surge in parents seeking assistance for their malnourished children. Is it still the case that not enough aid is getting through a year after the earthquake?
Because of many other crises around the globe, the funding cuts are relatively high for Syria. For instance, the UN humanitarian response plan has only covered up to 37% for last year. And there was a huge funding cut for WFP, the World Food Programme. Usually, they can reach on average 2 million people a month with food basket distribution. And they had to cut down in July last year to 1 million people a month. And now in December last year, they even suspended the whole general food assistance programming. And this is for sure consequences then for the people, for pregnant and lactating women, and also then for the children under 5.
We saw in our report just a moment ago a man saying that he's still living in shock. How great is the need for psychological support for those in the affected area?
I would say the need is very, very high. You can, in every conversation, in every phase, you look, you see the fear. And also now, since the earthquake anniversary was approaching, people were saying it's the same weather conditions, it's the same light, the same temperatures. There was a snow last weekend again in the region. So everything reminds the people of the earthquake last year in February, and people are scared to stay in their houses if they still can stay in their houses. We met a survivor in Turkey who was saying, I don't want to live in this house. There are cracks everywhere. Even though she fixed them, she can still see these cracks, and she cannot sleep at least one night for 8 hours. She's worried about her kids, about her future, her life.
What needs to happen, in your opinion, in order to assure that those affected by the quakes get the relief that they need?
One of the biggest challenges, and also what needs to be achieved, is sustained humanitarian access. There's one border crossing, which is the Bab el-Hawa border crossing from Turkey to Idlib, which was now renewed in January for another 6 months, which is a bilateral agreement between the Syrian government and the UN. And there was 2 additional border crossings opened last year after the earthquake, which will now expire mid of February, which is Bab al-Salam and Al-Rai border crossing. And these crossings need to be renewed for more than half a year, for more than 1 year, to have sustainable and long-term planning, to give also humanitarian programming and development programming a chance to plan ahead of time, to ensure that projects can be implemented for a longer time period to reach people in need.
Lena, thank you very much for talking with us today. That was Lena Schellhammer, the International Program Manager for Syria and Turkey for the International Malteser.
Thank you.